That Bill Colby had, being my handler, had moved on in the early 70s to Washington to take a position and ultimately became the director of the CIA. He maintained, because of the sensitivity of what I knew from that mission, he maintained direct control over me. And when he passed the baton on to the new director of the CIA, that new director called me back out of the field. I was in Yugoslavia at the time. Colby debriefed me, and Mr. Bush rebriefed me. And he was explained during the briefing and debriefing that I was loyal, I was a good man, and anything he needed, I was a trusted entity, and he could count on me. I had no problems with that.
Bush was head of the CIA at that time, and he personally debriefed you?
He personally in-briefed me as his personal...
In-briefed me, yeah, right. Mm-hmm.
As one of his personal assets.
Right.
So that was my first contact with the man who would someday become president. Bill had become a good friend, Colby, through the years, and worked with me, trained me, taught me the ropes, and he told me, he said, Chip, you do have some enemies in Washington. You know that Haig and Kissinger are very powerful men. Nixon's a very powerful man. You need to be sure that maybe you need to leave government service. You don't have me up here to protect you any longer. So I did. In '78 I left. I relocated to Colorado, started my family, got married, relocated to Colorado, started a little sandwich shop, and I was in the sandwich shop one day, and in walked these two guys with sunglasses and...
Suits again.
God, those suits.
Okay, you're jumping ahead now. I want to go back out to Central South America. Are you avoiding that, or?
No, we haven't gotten to that.
You haven't?
That
really?
Was in 1980 when I was reactivated.
Oh, in 1980 you were reactivated.
Right.
Okay, so you go to Colorado, and all of a sudden, two guys with suits walk in with sunglasses, and what do they say to you?
They say Bulldog, and I just thought, oh no. And I didn't answer. Then they said Pegasus, and that was the code name that I was given. So I knew, I didn't know who they were at first, but when they used Pegasus, I knew I was toast.
Right. Pegasus was a code word used for your operation.
Right.
You personally?
That was my code name.
Okay.
So I was told that my new assignment was to go to a place called Fort Campbell, Kentucky.
But you were out of the service then.
As a reserve officer, you're never really...
No, you're in the reserve?
In the reserves, right.
Okay.
I was reactivated. I was sent to a place called Fort Campbell, Kentucky. They decided after the problem in the desert, trying to get the hostages held in Iran, where our aircraft all went into one another, that they needed a task force set up for anti-terrorism. So they decided they'd put together an aviation task force at Fort Campbell, Kentucky. They took CIA assets, CIA officers, they put them under the control of the National Security Council, and they built this new unit called 160th Aviation Company that really wasn't on any of the military TO&E equipment lists. So there we were.
Another covert operation.
Another covert operation building itself in Fort Campbell, Kentucky. During the time from 1980 through 1984 that we were building that unit, testing different techniques of flight, testing different flight platforms. A lot of them I can't talk about. We would get into some heavy losses because we were doing things that never were done with these helicopters and other aircraft that we were flying. And so on one particular occasion we lost one of our unit commanders, a major, flew into some high power lines during a nighttime exercise. He was killed. His co-pilot, a warrant officer, had his legs cut off. During the post-crash investigation, a man from Washington came in and he identified himself as Jake. He was accompanied by another man who wouldn't identify himself, and so we just nicknamed him the Snake.
Jake the Snake.
Jake and the Snake. That's who was there. He was a pretty slimy guy, We would later find that Jake was a person who was attached to the NSC, and his actual name was Oliver North.
And that's your first contact with Ollie North?
That was my first contact with Ollie North.
And so what happened after that?
We had, the United States government had pushed for a little rebellion down in Central America, a place called Nicaragua. They had pushed and helped organize a group of rebels called the Contras. They talked them into fighting against the Sandinistas. I don't know why. I have some ideas why, but I won't get into just my ideas because I don't know why, other than someone thinking that it's a terrible thing that a country have its own sovereignty and not do like we are. Have this
And not be ruled by the CIA.
Right, right. At any rate, the CIA promised that they would fund and they would back this rebellion, but a man named Boland came out with an act in Congress that after we had set this thing up and it started, the war was in full swing down there, didn't allow us to support them any longer, except in a humanitarian effort. So the next thing I knew, I guess because of my contact with the then Vice President of the United States, who actually oversaw, by National Security Decision Directive Number 2, actually oversaw all intelligence operations.
George Bush.
George Bush, having been personally handled by him, and him knowing that I was reactivated and working in this Special Operations Unit in Fort Campbell, Kentucky, they said that we want you to go down posing as a humanitarian down there. And in the briefing with North, I said, what do you mean as a humanitarian? He said, you're going to be a medevac pilot now. You're going to fly medical aircraft into these contra camps. That's humanitarian. It's allowed. And you'll serve, in the briefing he said, you'll serve 3 entities. You'll serve the United States Army as a medevac pilot. You'll serve the United States Embassy through the military office. And you will serve, and that was CIA, that portion. And you serve the Pegasus operations, that we'll call it, because of your code name. And Pegasus operations are directly controlled by the NSC.
Now, was this North give you this briefing in Colorado when he walked into your shop, or was this later?
No, this was much later. This briefing was actually done in Fort Campbell, Kentucky. Then the next thing I knew,
North gave you the briefing there?
Right. I had.
So North walks into your shop in Colorado, says, "Hey, come on."
No, two agents walked into
Oh, it
the
wasn't
shop in
North.
Colorado.
I thought
No.
Jake was North.
No.
No, okay.
Well, Jake was, but Jake and the Snake came to a crash investigation where my commander had gotten killed.
I see. Okay.
At Fort Campbell, Kentucky.
Right. So the people that walked into Colorado, that was not
They
North.
were just a couple agents coming in to let me know I'm going back to work.
Okay. All right. And then you were briefed by Ollie.
I found that they were actually NSA.
Okay.
So.
You want to explain what NSA is?
National Security Agency. They do a lot of the background checks and everything in the United States. A lot of the spooks who listen to everything that's said here is NSA.
Right. The communications mainly is their job. Like wiretaps and keeping track of all of us via the telephones, and that's their job. So you're in Fort Campbell, you're given this assignment, you're going to be flying in and out medical supplies, right? And where are you flying these medical supplies out of?
Out of the Contra camps. When I finally went down posing as a medevac pilot, we went into the Contra camps. We'd always take coolers in. Usually the coolers going in were C4, explosives, grenades, things like that. And we would bring medical supplies out, and those medical supplies we would bring out in these coolers, big 124 quart coolers, was actually packages, bricks of cocaine.
Okay. Did you actually see this?
Actually saw it, actually tested it.
And where did you do this?
We did field tests right in our medevac offices in Pomerola Air Base.
So before you'd put it on the plane, you tested it, make sure it was real cocaine?
No, we tested them on several occasions. We didn't test every package, but some occasions they were delivered to our operations headquarters at Pomerola to take to an aircraft at a different location to fly out of the country. And whenever that happened, I would actually do a field test on it right there. On occasion, when I could get away with it without anyone seeing me, I'd do a field test on the aircraft. That was pretty hard to do.
Chip, you're flying out of what airfield in the United States?
In Honduras, we were flying out of the Contra camps into 3 airfields. One was San Lorenzo, one was Pomerola, and the other was in the northern part of the country called La Mesa. From there, the coolers were picked up by C-130s, C-141s, or civilian 123s. C-123s run by a company called Corporate Air Services out of Ilopango Air Base in San Salvador.
Corporate Air Services also being CIA.
CIA. And they were flown back into the States. I would find on a meeting on March 24th, 1985, that there were actually three different legs that stuff was moved on, and those legs were into Ohio, into Colorado, and into a little place in the center of the country in 1985 called Arkansas.
What airfield in Arkansas?
I know that there were two airfields in Arkansas. One was Arkansas Air Force Base, and the other one was a place called Mena.
And how about in Ohio?
In the Dayton, Ohio, and then in Colorado it was into Lamar, Colorado, and Pueblo, Colorado.
So you learned that the drugs are coming in then?
Oh yeah.
Cocaine?
Yeah.
On CIA planes?
Everything went through Panama, and then from Panama it was distributed out.
Were they CIA planes or military planes?
Military and CIA.
Both, huh?
Yeah.
Now, you tested it personally. Do you have any documents that would indicate that this is so?
Yes.
Oh, you do?
Yes.
I had no idea. Of course I did. Of course I did. That was a loaded question, Chip.
I know it was.
I knew the answer to that before I asked it. Okay, tell us about that.
When I started finding the cocaine on board the aircraft, I decided, hey, you know, this could go one of two ways. They could set us up pretty darn quick here if they ever wanted to get rid of us because of our knowledge, and especially because of my knowledge, because Bill had told me, you know, Chip, watch your butt, buddy. You know, you have some real enemies here in Washington. So what I did is we would be required to file flight plans when we'd leave Pomerola Air Base, where we based out of in Honduras. We'd file flight plans, and when we'd come back, I'd go to base operations and write on the back of that flight plan what we found, where we took it, who was on board the aircraft, and what went on during the flight. Basically, I'd debrief right on the back of flight plans. When a trusted Honduran official, who happened to be the brother of the Honduran Army Chief of Staff, saw what I was doing, he said, "We're going to keep these, you know, in a safe place. This is our insurance, Chip." I said, "Oh, okay."
And those notes are available in, right? Tatum Chronicles.
In the Tatum Chronicles.
I'm sorry, those notes are available in the Tatum Chronicles.
I went back to Honduras in 1985 and picked up those certified copies that are in those. In the Tatum Chronicles, it talks about all the people that you've heard of today involved in Honduras, involved in the Contra cocaine issues. Not only that, it also talks about persons before it even happened, because these are certified copies that were sealed in 1985 by Honduran officials. It talks about